listen to me very carefully today. There is a stirring happening in your spirit right now that you cannot explain. There's a restlessness in your soul that no amount of sleep can cure. There's a holy dissatisfaction with where you are, and you've been trying to shake it, but it won't leave you alone. That feeling, that's not a problem. That's a prop leaf. Something significant in your life. He doesn't send you a certified letter in the mail. He doesn't send you a certified letter in the mail. He doesn't schedule a meeting on your calendar. No. He creates a disruption in your spirit. He makes you uncomfortable in comfort. He makes you restless in routine. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes that there is a time for everything, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to be silent and a time to speak. But here's what many believers miss. Between the planting and the harvesting, there's a season that looks like nothing is happening. That seed is underground. It's in the dark. It's surrounded by dirt. And if that seed could talk, it would say, God, did you forget about me? Did you bury me and walk away? But what the seed doesn't understand is that the burial was necessary for the breakthrough. The darkness was required for the development. The pressure was essential for the purpose. You are not buried, you are planted. And when God plants something, it's because he intends to grow something that will feed nations. There once was an eagle who was raised in a chicken coop, and this is where the story gets interesting because this eagle had no idea who he really was. From the moment he hatched, all he saw were chickens. All he heard were chickens. All he knew was the chicken way of life. So what did he do? He walked like a chicken. He pecked at the ground like a chicken. He clucked like a chicken. He stayed low to the ground like a chicken. He accepted the limitations of the coop as if they were his own limitations. And here is what you need to understand. For years, this eagle was completely content. The coop felt like home. The chicken feed felt like enough. The low ceiling felt normal. He had adapted so perfectly to his environment that he forgot he was never designed for that environment in the first place. But then something shifted, and pay close attention to this part because this is where your story intersects with his story. One ordinary day, the eagle began to feel something strange stirring in his chest. It was subtle at first, just a flicker of discontent, just a whisper of dissatisfaction. But as days turned into weeks, that flicker became a flame, and that whisper became a roar. He could not sleep at night. He would lie awake, staring at the ceiling of the coop, feeling suffocated by walls that never bothered him before. The food that once satisfied him now left him strangely empty. The conversations with the other chickens that once fulfilled him now felt shallow and meaningless. And here's the part that will change how you see your own life. The eagle started looking up. He had never really noticed the sky before, but now he could not stop staring at it. Something about the vastness called to him. He would watch birds flying overhead and feel a pull in his chest, so strong it almost hurt. His wings would twitch involuntarily. His heart would race with an inexplicable desire. The chickens around him noticed the change, and they did not like it. They said, "What is wrong with you lately?" They said, "Why are you always looking up when everything you need is right here on the ground?" They said, "You are acting strange and you are making us uncomfortable." They said, "Why can you not just be content like the rest of us?" They said, "Stop dreaming and start being realistic." But no matter how hard the eagle tried to shake the feeling, it would not leave him alone. And this is the revelation that will unlock everything for you. That restlessness was not a malfunction. That dissatisfaction was not a disease. That holy discontent was not a sign that something was wrong with the eagle. It was a sign that something was finally right. It was his true nature crying out from the depths of his being. It was destiny knocking on the door of his consciousness. It was purpose refusing to stay silent any longer. You see, the eagle was never designed for the ground, and his body knew it. Even when his mind had forgotten, he was never created for low ceilings and small spaces. He was engineered for altitudes the chickens could not even imagine. His wings were not decorations, they were instruments of destiny. His eyes were not ordinary, they were designed to see from heights that would make the chickens dizzy. Every single part of him was crafted for soaring, not for scratching in the dirt. And here is the truth that will set you free if you let it sink deep into your spirit. When you start feeling uncomfortable in places that used to feel like home, that is not a crisis, that is a calling. When you can no longer settle for conversations that once satisfied you, that is not you being difficult, that is you evolving. When ordinary stops being enough and your soul starts craving extraordinary, that is not discontentment. That is destiny making its presence known. When you feel restless in rooms that everyone else finds comfortable, that is not something wrong with you, that is something right finally waking up inside of you. God is disrupting your comfort because he is about to elevate your assignment. He is making you allergic to your current level because he is preparing you for your next level. He is making the coop feel cramped because you were never meant to live in a coop in the first place. The restlessness you have been trying to pray away is actually the very answer to your prayers. It is God saying, I have more for you, and I will not let you settle for less. So stop fighting the feeling. Stop trying to convince yourself to be satisfied with chicken feed when you are designed to soar with eagles. Stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never built for someone with your wingspan. The restlessness is not your enemy, it is your invitation. It is heaven tapping you on the shoulder, saying, get ready because everything is about to change. It is the Holy Spirit stirring the waters of your soul, preparing you for a move of God so significant that your life will never be the same. That eagle eventually spread his wings and discovered what he was made for. And the moment he caught that first wind current, he realized the coop was never his home. It was just his starting point, and everything he thought he knew about himself was only a fraction of who he was truly created to be. Deep beneath the earth's surface, there was a piece of carbon, and this is where the story takes a turn that will change how you see your current situation. This carbon was ordinary in every sense of the word. There was nothing special about it, nothing remarkable, nothing that would make anyone take a second look. It was just carbon surrounded by other minerals and rocks, blending in with everything around it. It had company, it had community, it had belonging. It fit in perfectly with its environment, and life felt comfortable and predictable, but then something unexpected happened, and pay attention because this is where your story begins to make sense. The earth shifted violently without warning. Tectonic plates moved in ways no one could have predicted. And that piece of carbon found itself being pushed deeper and deeper underground, separated from everything it knew. Ripped away from the community it had grown comfortable with, isolated in a darkness so thick it could not see anything around it. Alone in ways it had never experienced before. And here is what will reshape your entire perspective on loneliness. The carbon cried out in desperation, "Why am I alone?" It screamed into the darkness, "Why has everything been taken from me?" It wept in confusion, "Why have all my connections disappeared?" It questioned the very purpose of its existence, saying, "What did I do to deserve this isolation?" The silence around it was deafening. The loneliness was crushing. The separation felt like punishment. But the story does not end there, and this is the part you cannot afford to miss. As if the isolation was not enough, the carbon began to experience something even more terrifying. Pressure. Unimaginable, suffocating, relentless pressure from every direction. The lit the turd. the tisp heap, weight of the earth pressing down on it with a force that felt unbearable. Heat so intense it thought it would be destroyed completely. There was no escape, no relief, no moment of comfort, just constant unending pressure and heat in total isolation. The carbon cried out again, saying, "This is too much. I cannot survive this. The pressure is breaking me. The heat is destroying me. Why would I be brought to this place only to be crushed? Why would I be separated from everything I loved, only to be subjected to this torture? This makes no sense. There is no purpose in this pain." And this is the revelation that will transform how you see your own isolation. What the carbon did not understand was that the isolation was not abandonment. It was the process. The pressure was not punishment, it was purpose. The heat was not destruction, it was transformation. Every single element that felt like suffering was actually serving a divine design that the carbon could not comprehend from its limited perspective in the darkness. Because here is what was actually happening in that dark, isolated, pressurized place. The very molecular structure of that ordinary carbon was being rearranged. Atoms were shifting into new formations. Bonds were being broken and reformed in configurations that had never existed before. What looked like destruction from the inside was actually reconstruction. What felt like breaking was actually remaking. What seemed like an ending was actually a becoming. This is where the story gets remarkable and where your faith needs to rise up. After years of being alone, pressed, heated, and refined in the darkness, that ordinary piece of carbon emerged from the depths of the earth as something extraordinary. It was no longer common carbon that blended in with everything around it. It was now a diamond, rare, valuable, breathtaking, one of the most precious substances on the entire planet. Something that kings and queens would fight wars to possess. Something that would be placed in crowns and adorn the fingers of royalty. Something that reflected light in ways that took people's breath away. The very isolation that felt like rejection had become the birthplace of its rarity. The pressure that felt like it would crush it had actually created its strength. The heat that felt unbearable had purified it into something flawless. Everything it suffered through was necessary for everything it was becoming. And here is the truth that will set your mind free if you receive it. When God separates you from the crowd, He is not rejecting you, He is selecting you. When friendships fade and circles shrink, and you find yourself alone in ways you never expected, do not panic, because God is not punishing you. He is processing you. When the pressure increases and the heat rises and you feel like you cannot take any more, understand that you are not being destroyed. You are being riffened into something the world has never seen before. Diamonds are not formed in crowds. They are formed in isolation. Diamonds are not created in comfort. They are created under pressure. Diamonds do not emerge from easy circumstances. They emerge from intense heat and crushing weight applied over extended periods of time. The very environment that feels like it is killing you is actually the environment that is making you invaluable. Your separation from certain people is not a sign that something is wrong. It is preparation for elevation that those people were never designed to walk in with you. Your isolation is not evidence of abandonment. It is evidence of selection. God is doing a private work in you before He does a public work through you, and some processes require solitude because the presence of the wrong people would contaminate the transformation. So the next time you feel alone, remember the diamond. The next time pressure surrounds you on every side, remember what pressure produces. The next time the heat feels unbearable, remember that heat purifies and refines and removes impurities that would diminish your value. You are not being destroyed in this season. You are being developed. You are not being abandoned. You are being prepared for an assignment so significant that it requires you to become something rare, something strong, something that can withstand weight, that would crush ordinary. Carbon. The isolation is intentional. The pressure is purposeful. The process is producing something precious. And when you finally emerge from this season, you will understand that every moment alone, every crushing weight, every degree of heat was crafting you into exactly who you needed to become for exactly where God is. KKU, a farmer planted a bamboo seed in the ground, and this is where the story begins to mirror everything you have been experiencing in your own life. This farmer was not a foolish man. He had done his research. He knew what bamboo was capable of becoming. He had seen fully grown bamboo forests that took his breath away with their heightened strength and beauty. So he planted that seed with expectation and faith, believing that what he put in the ground would eventually rise up and become something magnificent. The farmer watered that seed faithfully every single day without fail. He showed up with his watering can before the sun rose. He tended to that patch of soil with dedication and commitment. To crowd the space. He protected the area from anything that might disturb what he had planted. He did everything right. He followed every instruction. He was diligent and consistent and faithful. But here's where the story takes a turn that will challenge everything you think you know about growth and timing. Weeks passed and nothing happened. The farmer looked at the ground expecting to see a small sprout pushing through the soil, but the ground looked exactly the same as the day he planted the seed. Not a single sign of life, not a single indication that anything was happening beneath the surface. Just dirt, just emptiness, just silence. And this is where most people would start to question themselves. Months passed and still nothing. The farmer kept watering, kept showing up, kept believing. But the evidence of his faithfulness was nowhere to be found. A full year went by, and there was absolutely no sign of growth. 365 days of watering and waiting and working and watching, and the ground showed him nothing in return. His neighbors started to take notice, and this is where the story gets painfully relatable. They walked by his farm and saw him watering what appeared to be nothing. They whispered to each other and laughed among themselves. They said, "Look at that foolish farmer watering empty ground." They said he has been out there for a year and has nothing to show for it. They said he is wasting his time and his water and his energy. They said that seed is obviously dead and he is too stubborn to accept it. Some of them were bold enough to say it to his face. They said, "Give it up already." They said, "You are embarrassing yourself." They said, "How long are you going to keep watering dirt?" They said a smart man would have moved on by now. But the farmer kept watering, and this is the part that requires you to pay very close attention. The second year came and went. Still nothing visible above the ground. The same dirt, the same emptiness, the same silence. The neighbors laughed louder now. They pointed at him openly. They used him as an example of foolishness when they taught their children. They said, "Do not be like that farmer who wastes his life on things that will never produce." The third year arrived, and still there was no breakthrough, no sprout, no growth, no evidence. Just a faithful farmer watering what everyone else had declared dead. By now, even some of his own family members started to question his sanity. They said maybe the neighbors are right. They said maybe you should plant something else. They said maybe this is not your season for bamboo. And here is where the pain becomes almost unbearable in its familiarity. The fourth year passed with the same results. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. 4 years of faithful watering. 4 years of daily dedication. 4 years of showing up and believing and protecting and investing. And not a single visible result to validate his efforts. Can you imagine the internal battle this farmer must have fought? Can you imagine the voices in his own head that must have tormented him in the quiet hours of the night? Every logical argument pointed toward giving up. Every piece of visible evidence suggested he was wasting his time. Every voice around him confirmed that he was a fool for continuing. But the farmer remembered something that the neighbors did not know. And this is the revelation that will anchor your soul during your own waiting season. The farmer remembered that bamboo does not work like other plants. He remembered that bamboo operates on a complete different timeline than anything else in his garden. He remembered that what looks like nothing happening above ground does not mean nothing is happening below ground. He remembered that bamboo spends years developing a root system so deep and so strong and so extensive that when it finally breaks through the surface, it will be able to support heights that other plants could never reach. So he kept watering, he kept believing, he kept showing up. He kept ignoring the voices of doubt, both outside and inside his head. Then in the 5th year, something miraculous happened, and this is the part that will make you want to shout. The bamboo did not just sprout. It did not just slowly emerge from the ground like a normal plant. No. That bamboo shot up 90 feet in just 6 weeks. 6 weeks. After 5 years of invisible growth, the bamboo exploded through the surface with a speed and a force that left everyone astonished. The same neighbors who had mocked the farmer now stood with their mouths hanging open. They said, "How is this possible?" They said, "I have never seen anything grow so fast." They said, "It is like it happened overnight." But the farmer knew something they did not understand. And this is the truth that will carry you through your own delay. That bamboo did not grow 90 feet in 6 weeks. That bamboo grew 90 feet in 5 years. All that time when nothing was visible, all that time when the ground looked empty, all that time when the critics laughed and the doubters mocked, that bamboo was working. It was growing. It was developing. It was building a root system so extensive and so deep that it would be able to support extraordinary height and withstand any storm. The delay was not denial. The waiting was not wasted. The invisible years were not empty. Years. They were foundation years. They were root years. They were preparation years. And when the breakthrough finally came, it came with a speed and a magnitude that made 5 years of waiting worth every single moment. And here is the truth that will set your heart free if you let it sink deep into your spirit. When it looks like nothing is happening, God is working underground. When you cannot see any evidence of progress, God is building your foundation. When you have been faithful for years and have nothing visible to show for it, God is developing a root system in your life that will be able to support the height He is about to take you to. Your delay is not God being slow. Your delay is God being strategic. He knows that if He gave you the height before you had the depth, the first storm would knock you down. He knows that if He gave you the visibility before you had the roots, you would not be able to sustain what He placed in your hands. He is not withholding your breakthrough because He is cruel. He is timing your breakthrough because He is kind. So do not despise the underground season. Do not resent the invisible years. Do not interpret the delay as denial. God is doing something beneath the surface that will justify everything you have been through when it finally breaks through the soil, and the very people who mocked your waiting season will marvel at your rising season, and they will think it happened overnight, but you will know the truth, that it was years of faithful watering that produced a sudden visible breakthrough. A young woman discovered she was pregnant with her first child. And this is where the story begins to unfold in ways that will speak directly to what you have been carrying in your own spirit. When she first found out the news, she was overwhelmed with joy. She could not stop smiling. She told everyone who would listen. She imagined the nursery and picked out names and dreamed about holding that little one in her arms. The promise of what was coming filled her with excitement and anticipation and hope. But then the reality of carrying another life began to set in, and this is where the story takes a turn that you need to hear. The first few months were uncomfortable but manageable. She experienced nausea that came in waves at the most inconvenient times. She felt exhausted in ways she had never experienced before. Simple tasks that used to be effortless now required tremendous energy. But she pushed through because she knew something beautiful was growing inside of her. Then came the middle months, and this is where the weight started to become undeniable. Her body began to change in ways she did not expect. Her back started aching constantly from carrying the extra weight. Her feet swelled until her shoes no longer fit. Her sleep became fragmented and restless because she could not find a comfortable position no matter how many pillows she used. She would lie awake at night, feeling the baby move and wondering if she had the strength to carry this promise to full term. And here is where the burden became almost unbearable. The final months arrived and the weight she carried was immense. Every step required effort. Every movement was calculated. Simple things like bending over or getting out of a chair became major undertakings. She could not remember what it felt like to be light and free. The burden she carried affected every single aspect of her daily life. She found herself crying at unexpected moments, and this is the part that will resonate with your own experience. Sometimes she cried because, the physical discomfort. Sometimes she cried because she felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of what was growing inside her. Sometimes she cried because she wondered if she was strong enough to do this. The weight was constant. The pressure was relentless. The burden never gave her a moment of relief. Meeting friends visited her and said, "You look absolutely miserable." They said that pregnancy is really taking a toll on you. They said, "You poor thing carrying all that weight around." They said, "Just hang in there, it will be over soon." They meant well, but their words only reminded her of how heavy the burden had become. But then her mother came to visit, and this is the moment that changed everything. Her mother had walked this road before. Her mother had carried burdens and experienced labor and delivered promises. Her mother had wisdom that only comes from having been through the process herself. She took her daughter's tired, swollen hands in her own and looked into her exhausted eyes with compassion and understanding. And her mother said something that will transform how you see what you have been carrying. She said, "Sweetheart, I know you are tired. I know the weight feels crushing. I know you wonder some days if you can make it, but I need you to hear me clearly. The weight you are carrying is not a burden. It is a blessing. The discomfort you feel is not pointless. It is purposeful. You are not just uncomfortable, my dear. You are creating something. You are not being crushed. You are being a carrier. There is a difference between being burdened by something and being pregnant with something. And what you are carrying is going to change everything. The young woman looked at her mother with tears streaming down her face, and this is when understanding began to dawn. Her mother continued and said, "Every ache you feel is confirmation that something is alive inside of you. Every sleepless night is evidence that the promise is growing. Every moment of pressure is proof that you are close to delivery. The weight is not meaningless. The weight is actually the very presence of your promise, making its existence known." And then her mother said the words that unlocked everything. She said, "When you finally hold that baby in your arms, you will understand that every ache was worth it. Every sleepless night will fade from your memory. Every moment of pressure will be swallowed up by overwhelming joy. What you are carrying is temporary, but what you are producing is permanent. The discomfort of the process will be forgotten in the delight of the product." 9 months later, the young woman went into labor, and this is where the burden reached its peak intensity. The contractions came in waves, each one more powerful than the last. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced. She gripped the hospital bed and cried out, wondering if she could survive what she was going through. The pressure was immense. The pain was overwhelming. She was pushed to the absolute limit of what she thought she could endure. But then, in one miraculous moment, everything changed. And this is the part that will make you weep with hope. She heard a cry, not her own cry, but the cry of new life, the cry of promise fulfilled, the cry of purpose manifested. The doctors placed that baby in her arms, and in that instant, every single moment of suffering was swallowed up by indescribable joy. The 9 months of wait were forgotten. The sleepless nights vanished from her memory. The aches and pains dissolved into irrelevance because she was holding the promise A, and the promise was worth everything she went through to deliver it. And here is the truth that will reframe everything you have been experiencing. That vision weighing on your heart is not a burden sent to break you. It is a blessing trusted to you. That calling keeping you up at night is not a curse stealing your peace. It is a promise demanding to be birthed. That dream that feels too heavy to carry is not something to be discarded. It is something to be delivered. You are not burdened, you are recreant. And there is a massive difference between the two. When you are burdened, you need relief. When you are pregnant, you need delivery. When you are burdened, the weight is pointless. When you are pregnant, the weight is purposeful. When you are burdened, you try to get rid of what you are carrying. When you are pregnant, you protect what you are carrying until it is ready to emerge. The reason you feel so heavy right now is because what God has placed inside of you is growing. It is getting bigger. It is taking up more space. It is demanding more of your energy and attention and resources. And that is exactly what is supposed to happen when something significant is developing within you. Your labor pains are not a sign that something is wrong. Your labor pains are a sign that delivery is approaching. The pressure you feel is not pushing you toward breakdown. It is pushing your promise toward breakthrough. You are in transition, and transition is the most painful part of labor, but it is also the part that comes right before the baby arrives. So do not give up now. Do not abandon what you have been carrying. Do not let the pain convince you to reject the promise. You have carried this too long to quit now. You have come too far to turn back now. You have invested too much to give up now. Hold on, because what you are about to deliver is going to be worth every single moment of discomfort you have experienced. Your delivery day is coming. And when you finally hold that promise in your arms, every tear will be transformed into testimony, and every pain will become praise, and you will look back on this difficult season and say it was hard, but it was worth it, because look at what my struggle produced. A young explorer heard rumors of a treasure hidden deep in an ancient forest, and this is where the story begins to parallel the battles you have been fighting in your own life. The treasure was legendary. Stories about it had been passed down through generations. It was said to be priceless beyond measure, containing riches so vast that whoever possessed it would never lack anything ever again. The treasure had the power to transform not only the life of the one who found it, but also the lives of everyone that person loved. The young explorer listened to these stories, and something ignited inside of him. He knew in his heart that he was meant to find this treasure. He felt a calling toward it that he could not explain. So he gathered his supplies, packed his bag, and set out on the journey that would change everything. But the moment he stepped foot into the forest, something shifted, and this is where you need to pay very close attention. From his very first step, resistance met him. So the path that should have been clear was overgrown with thick brush. Thorns tore at his clothes and scratched his skin, leaving him bleeding before he had even traveled a mile. The terrain was rough and unforgiving. Every step forward required tremendous effort. It was as if the forest itself was trying to push him back. But he pressed on because he believed the treasure. He was worth it. Then came the rivers. And this is where the opposition intensified. Rushing waters blocked his path. Not gentle streams he could easily wade through, but raging rivers with currents strong enough to sweep a man away to his death. He had to figure out how to cross. He had to build makeshift bridges and find narrow passages and risk his life multiple times just to continue moving forward. Each river crossing left him exhausted and drained. And here's where the warfare reached a level he never anticipated. Wild animals began to appear on his path. Creatures with sharp teeth and hungry eyes. Predators that saw him as prey. He had to fight some of them off with his bare hands. He had to hide from others until they passed. He had to sleep with one eye open, never knowing when the next attack would come. The danger was constant. The threat was real. His life was at risk every single moment. But still he pressed on because something inside him refused to quit. Then came the army, and this is where most travelers would have turned back. Guarding the treasure was an entire army of soldiers. Trained warriors whose only job was to prevent anyone from reaching what was hidden beyond them. They were armed and dangerous and positioned strategically to stop any intruder. When the young explorer saw them, his heart sank. How could one man get past an entire army? The odds were impossible. The situation seemed hopeless. Exhausted from the thorns and wounded from the river crossings and weakened from fighting wild animals, the young explorer sat down on a rock and put his head in his hands. Defeat washed over him like a wave. Every part of his body ached. Every part of his mind screamed at him to give up. And this is the moment when doubt spoke the loudest. He said to himself, maybe this treasure is not meant for me. Maybe I was foolish to even try. Maybe the people who told me about it were lying. Maybe it does not even exist. Maybe I should turn back now before I lose my life trying to reach something that was never mine to possess. The resistance he had faced replayed in his mind. The thorns, the rivers, the animals, the army. It was too much. It was more than any reasonable person should be expected to endure. Surely, if this treasure was meant for him, the path would be easier. Surely, if this was his destiny, there would be fewer obstacles in his way. But then something unexpected happened, and this is the part that will revolutionize how you see your own battles. An old wise man appeared seemingly out of nowhere. His face was weathered with age, but his eyes were bright with knowing. He walked slowly toward the young explorer and sat down beside him on the rock. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The old man simply Then the old man opened his mouth and asked a question that changed everything. He said, "Son, let me ask you something important." The young explorer looked up with weary eyes. The old man continued, "If this treasure you seek were worthless, would it be guarded?" The young explorer did not answer, but something stirred in his spirit. The old man went on, "If what you are trying to reach had no value, would there be thorns and rivers and wild animals and armies standing between you and it?" Think about it carefully. When was the last time you saw heavy security guarding something that did not matter? When was the last time you saw an army protecting something insignificant? When was the last time you encountered fierce opposition on your way to something worthless? The young explorer sat up straight. Order as understanding began to dawn. And this is the revelation that will transform how you see every battle you have been fighting. The old man smiled and said, "The very resistance you have been facing is not proof that you are going the wrong way. It is proof that you are going the right way. The thorns confirm you are on the path to something valuable. The rivers confirm you are getting closer to something worth protecting. The wild animals confirm that what lies ahead is significant enough to be guarded by danger. The army confirms that the treasure is real, and it is worth more than you can imagine." He leaned in closer and said, "Worthless things are left unguarded, son. Anybody can access what has no value, but priceless things are protected. Priceless things are surrounded by obstacles. Priceless things require you to fight to reach them." The old man stood up and looked down at the young explorer with fire in his ancient eyes and said, "So the question is not Why is there so much resistance? The question is, are you going to let the resistance convince you to abandon a treasure that is clearly valuable enough to be guarded this heavily? With those words, the old man walked away and disappeared into the forest as mysteriously as he had arrived. The young explorer sat in silence for a long moment, letting the words sink deep into his soul. Then something shifted inside of him. The exhaustion was still there. The wounds were still real. The army was still waiting. But now he understood something he had not understood before. The battle was not a sign to turn back. The battle was a sign to press forward. He rose to his feet with new strength, and this is where the story reaches its climax. He approached the army not with fear, but with faith. He fought not with desperation, but with determination. He pressed through, not because the obstacles disappeared, but because he now understood what the obstacles meant. Every blow he endured knowing the treasure was real. Every wound he suffered knowing the prize was worth it. Every moment of pain he experienced with the revelation that priceless things do not come without a fight. And when he finally broke through, and this is the part that will make your spirit leap, when he finally reached the treasure, it exceeded everything he had ever imagined. It was more beautiful than the stories described. It was more valuable than the legends claimed. It was enough to transform not only his life, but the lives of his children and his children's children for generations to come. As he held the treasure in his hands, he thought about every thorn that had cut him. He thought about every river that had almost drowned him. He thought about every animal that had attacked him. He thought about every soldier he had fought, and he realized that every single battle had been worth it. The treasure in his hands was so magnificent that the pain of the journey faded into insignificance. And here is the truth that will anchor your soul when the battles seem overwhelming. The opposition you are facing is not evidence that you are going the wrong direction. It is confirmation that you are going the right direction. The enemy does not waste ammunition on people who are not a threat. He does not assign armies to stop people who are not going anywhere significant. He attacks those who are about to access something powerful. Your warfare is confirmation that your breakthrough is valuable. Your battle is proof that your destiny is significant. The intensity of the resistance is directly proportional to the magnitude of what is waiting on the other side. So when the attacks increase, do not retreat. When the opposition intensifies, do not surrender. When it seems like everything is fighting against you, do not interpret that as a sign to give up. Interpret it as a sign that what you are reaching for is so priceless that hell itself has assigned an army to stop you from possessing it. That should tell you something about what is waiting on the other side of your battle. And if the enemy is fighting you this hard, it is because he knows what you are about to step into, and he is terrified of what will happen when you finally take hold of the treasure that has your name on it.